So you've seen our 5-step deadlift setup process. We have a bunch of videos on the channel about the deadlifts. But when I'm in a commercial gym or looking around on YouTube, I notice that lots and lots of people are still not deadlifting in the most efficient way. So I want to show you the most common errors that we see on the deadlift. The first thing is the stance width. So John, take an extra wide stance. You can just tell this is wrong by looking at it, right? His arms are too wide, his knees start to cave. So stand back up. We'd use a narrow stance for the starting strength style deadlift. For most people, you want to place your shin right in the middle of the smooth part of the knurling, and you can adjust from there. With your toes out at around 15 degrees. The more narrow your heels are, the more toe angle you have. So John, show us your normal stance. And so step one is to set up with your shins 1 inch from the bar, but the stance width is important too. It's a nice athletic stance, the same stance you would take if you were going to jump. That's my standing vertical, by the way. Now let's take a look at a couple features of this position. If you notice, John's knees are right in the middle of the ditch of his elbows. And that is a visual reference I can use as a coach to make sure his hips are in the right place. Because if his knees come forward, his hips drop. If his knees go back behind his elbows, his hips come up. So this is more like a stiff-legged deadlift. Bring your knees forward. This is more like the deadlift you see in a commercial gym, which is not efficient. So he's going to make sure his hips are at the correct height, and that's roughly knees in the middle of the ditch of his elbows for most people. All right, so let me show you a side angle of what it looks like when John is setting his back so I can show you guys what it looks like when it's correct. John, go ahead and take your grip. Place your shins against the bar, knees out. Now he's going to, just do it a little bit though. Squeeze your chest up and notice his back starting to flatten. Now do it all the way. So he's pulling his back into a flat, anatomically normal position so that it's a good transmitter of force. Let go. So when he's bent over in the bottom of the position, of the deadlift setup position, his back is in flexion, and he's going to think about pointing his chest at the wall in front of him and dropping his belly between his legs and using the weight in his hands to flatten his entire back from top to bottom. So if he uses the weight in his hands, points his chest at the wall, that's going to start flattening his back way up here. It's going to send a cascade effect all the way down his spine, and then he can focus on just this last piece of lower back extension to get everything locked into place, and then he can push on the floor and deadlift. So notice as he squeezes his chest up, it sends a cascade effect all the way down his spine. It's in perfectly flat anatomical position. Go ahead. And now his spine can transmit force efficiently through his arms, into his hands, and into the barbell. Set it back down. Cool. So just like in all the other lifts, John has to be in balance as he's setting up for the lift and as he's lifting the weight. A very common problem, John, go ahead and take your grip. When lifters are taking their grip and getting set up on the deadlift is that they'll lean forward into their toes. So as they push the floor away, they're off balance and the barbell's coming off their shins. And I know all of you guys in the YouTube comments are gonna freak out about the fact that John's wearing lifting shoes in the deadlift, but not only is it okay, it's preferred. We can argue in the comments below. However, there is a slight downside, we'll admit that. The heel has a tendency to pitch you slightly forward, so you have to counteract the effect of wanting to be in your toes, even more so when you've got the shoe on. So John, go ahead and set up, but set up in your toes. So his weight's forward, set your back, and I'm just gonna ask John to shift his weight back into his heels, and then make sure the weight is balanced between toe and heel before he starts pushing the floor away. Another issue we see on the deadlift is lifters not using long, straight arms, so they have a bend in their elbow. And this only applies to new lifters, so go ahead and take your grip, John. Because as the weight gets heavy, if it's heavy enough, it's gonna pull this damn thing straight. But as you're new and the weight is light, you can still lift with bent elbows. Get in the habit of, as you pull the slack out of the bar, hear that clank, do it again. Pull the slack out of the bar with long, straight arms, and once you have that tension, you can use the weight in your hands to squeeze your back flat. So squeezing your back flat can be accomplished by first making sure your arms are nice and straight. You've got your hands loaded up and you can use that load in your hands to get your back nice and flat. Everybody knows how to grip a barbell. You just wrap your fingers around it, thumbs on top. On the deadlift though, we use a modified version of that when it starts to get heavy. So eventually the weight is going to start opening your grip and it's going to start slipping out of your hands. You can correct that by alternating one hand so that as the barbell slips out of this hand, it slips into this one. Better than that though, so you don't get an asymmetrical load in your shoulder, and one hand floating off of your shins is to use a hook grip. So the hook grip is just like the normal grip, but the thumb is inside. And the friction from the fingernail and the pad of the finger is what locks the barbell into place when it's compressed into your grip from the weight of the bar. The deadlift is referred to as a pull, and that is correct. You are pulling the bar off the ground, but I'd rather you think about the deadlift as a leg press. So your leg pressing the earth away. When you think about the deadlift as a pull, you'll have a tendency to open up your hips instead of starting the movement by extending your knees, and that often causes the barbell to come off of your legs. So John, show me a deadlift where you're not thinking about pushing on the floor, you're just thinking about pulling on it with your arms and opening your hips first. So his hips have a tendency to drop, his knees have a tendency to come forward, the barbell's got a tendency to move forward when the shins come forward. Now John, show me the correct version. He's leg pressing the earth away, and the barbell is in contact with his legs all the way up and all the way down. Another common problem we see is the lifter not finishing the top of the rep. So go ahead and take your grip. Set your back, set your gaze, and his gaze is about 15 feet in front of him, not at the floor. And he's finishing soft. So my cue as a coach is finish the rep. Pull your chest through, extend your chest, stand tall. Those are a bunch I can use. Bring it back down. And then another version of that same problem is instead of standing up, John or the lifter would stand back and put an unnecessary bend in the system. So go ahead, John. And over-exaggerate the finish. So we don't want the lifter standing back, we just want the lifter standing up. Now, let's torture John for a minute and see how long he can hold this barbell. It's only 225, man. When you're at the top of the deadlift, and there's... At the top of the deadlift, you will be behind the bar because the bar's in front of you, but do it incorrectly. You shouldn't be bent all the way back and over-exaggerate the top position. At the same time, stand up straight. You shouldn't be soft without all your joints locked out. Stand up straight, pull your chest through. That's the correct finish position of the deadlift. The deadlift is brutally hard. It teaches you how to do hard things. It's the heaviest lift in the weight room, or at least it should be. Lift builds nice big traps, big wide lats, and a really strong back. And as you know, a strong back is a back that hurts less and gets hurt less often.